I met someone who claimed to be the devil, and I think I believe them. I want to begin by clarifying that I'm not especially spiritual. If someone quizzed me on whether I believe in a higher power, I'd likely just give a non-committal shrug, mumble something about being undecided, and move on with my routine. That perspective shifted dramatically after what happened last night. My buddies are the type who thrive on chaotic evenings, wild gatherings, a quick line of cocaine, popping some ecstasy in the restroom, perhaps pairing off with a stranger and firing off a message to me at some ungodly hour saying they've got their own way home and don't need the lift I'd promised. It's not that I'm against having a drink. I enjoy one myself. It's just that nightclubs aren't my scene. I'd rather chill in a quiet tavern, beverage in grip, tuning in to whatever's blaring on the television as dictated by some rough-looking regular hollering from the corner. That's more my version of a good time. So, when my pals suggest hitting the town for a big night out, I agree to tag along. I stick around for the initial venue, grab a zero-alcohol beer in case I'm needed as the designated driver, and do my best to act like I'm enjoying myself. Once I spot them dancing intimately with women or men, or chatting up someone who looks suspiciously like a supplier, I figure my role is done. We're not too deep into the city, the late-night subway is reliable, and I can always retrieve my vehicle the following day. That's the point where I slip away from the pulsing lights and beats, seeking out a spot with a more down-to-earth vibe. Finding one isn't challenging in the slightest. I ended up somewhat disoriented in a pub named the Tattered Wing. The title didn't appeal to me much, but the prices were low, and the main crowd consisted of older gentlemen fixated on old soccer matches replaying on the screen. I attempted to act as if I hadn't just escaped a deafening dance floor with my head still buzzing. I smoothed down my hair, gripped my phone like a lifeline, and approached the counter. I requested a double measure of scotch and downed it in a single gulp. Just because I'd ditched the club didn't mean I couldn't unwind properly. I lingered at the bar solo for a bit, browsing my device as if engaged in something profoundly important, rather than mindless scrolling. I eavesdropped on the fellows lounging on the couches. They'd erupt in shouts periodically. It seemed like the TV was cycling through game highlights, yet they were passionately loyal to their sides. I ordered another scotch and faded into the scenery. Naturally, late-night wanderers from nearby spots are a regular occurrence. Soon enough, a group of barely clothed ladies stumbled inside, giggling and chattering, gesturing toward their chosen booth. I noticed a man hauling his buddy in, the latter draped limply over his arm, probably out cold. He dumped his companion onto one of the worn leather seats, soaked in spills and ash, and barked for 2 glasses of water plus every packet of nuts available. The staff behind the counter appeared wearily entertained. Some of the women were capturing self-portraits, sending quick videos to companions still partying elsewhere. They were lining up rounds of shots, psyching up for the remainder of their adventure. A pair of guys entered carrying styrofoam containers of curry. Through the glass pane, I spotted someone devouring a fast food burger on the outdoor benches. This was an evening dedicated to the youthful and intoxicated, and my senses were sufficiently numbed by the liquor to appreciate observing these various personalities from afar without any need to engage. That changed when a figure slid onto the stool beside mine. Do I come across as someone with parental abandonment problems? She was of typical stature, though it wasn't immediately obvious since she was propped heavily against the counter. Slender build with cropped hair in a strikingly vivid crimson shade. It accentuated her rounded features, which were spoiled by smeared eyeliner, blurred lip color. Honestly, her cosmetics appeared to be dissolving off her skin. A stray French fry was tangled in a lock near her temple. The intoxicated part of my brain briefly considered plucking it free. She was evidently hammered, and as I scanned the room, I couldn't pinpoint her origin. She didn't match the selfie squad, nor the group with the unconscious friend. For her well-being, I hoped she wasn't associated with the elder patrons. I peered toward the exterior, checking if perhaps a party was short one tipsy, flame-haired member, but the view was obscured. Condensation had clouded the panes. Too warm indoors, too chilly out. "Are you all right?" I inquired. She jabbed a digit in my direction. "Respond to what I asked," she mumbled thickly. I was at a loss for words. I opted for an uncomfortable gaze, hoping my puzzled look conveyed my confusion. Her mouth twisted into a boozy grin. She let out a snort, clapping a palm over her lips to stifle her chuckles. It merely accelerated the disintegration of her lip stain. "I do, actually," she admitted, propping herself higher against the surface. "Have issues with my dad, that is. If it wasn't already clear." She motioned toward her disheveled self, to the rumpled outfit that must have been stunning when she departed earlier that evening, to the blotches resembling dried remnants of meals, the tacky sheen on her throat and collarbones that was unmistakably from a spilled beverage. "What occurred?" I questioned. Her strands had coiled around her nape, I noted. They were glued with that same goo. She was a total disaster. "I got into a few scuffles, nothing major," she replied, dismissing it with a shoulder lift. "Didn't initiate any, no way, that's not my thing. But my dad, your father did this?" She beamed radiantly. "Indirectly, yes. Should I contact somebody for you?" My device was already in my grasp. She seemed perhaps in her young 20s, but that didn't rule out familial mistreatment. The only helpline I recalled was for minors, which didn't fit. Authorities? Damn, was I really facing police involvement tonight? While my mates were indulging in drugs just a couple establishments away, she firmly pressed my arm downward, already denying with a headshake. No, she stated. I don't want any calls made. Her demeanor shifted then. It wasn't the faux seductive vibe I'd encountered from many in her condition. It was candid, expansive, captivating. She desired something from me, and I felt drawn to provide it. I need something different. What is it you need? I probed. To share a tale with you, she responded, then eyed the counter, and for you to get me a beverage. Existence can be frustrating, and I suspect I've misplaced my purse. I chuckled. I had no acquaintance with this woman, no clue of her background. My typical nights involved achieving a pleasant buzz and ensuring my friends didn't end up in peril by dawn. I was accustomed to occasional flirtations, but perched on that stool with my glass, I sensed this wasn't romantic pursuit. This individual had no interest in intimacy. She merely wished to converse. I supposed I was fine with that. What's your preference? I inquired. Her mouth curved slyly. Appletini. The establishment had a sparse selection of mixed drinks, but fortunately an appletini was among them. I paired it with a cider for myself, abruptly conscious of the evening's potential trajectory. I'd carelessly furnished this already inebriated unknown with additional booze, and she'd evidently endured a tough outing. An old protective urge resurfaced, the same one that prompted me to check on my companions periodically to confirm they hadn't strayed into hazard beyond the venue. With nobody but the server noting our presence on these perches, I realized I was now accountable for this highly intoxicated outsider. She cradled her cocktail, tracing a digit lightly along the edge of the hazy martini vessel. This evokes memories, she remarked pleasantly. She turned her gaze to me abruptly, her emerald irises striking. Do you know its original name? She smirked prior to my reply. Adam's Apple Martini. I let out a snort. Yeah, I believe I've come across that. Naturally, it wasn't truly an apple, she proceeded, her focus returning to the container. The ancient writings got that detail wrong, largely because your language lacks a term for it these days. The produce was extraordinarily rare, and frankly, it doesn't exist in this plane. Solely in Eden. She chuckled wistfully. And Eden's vanished long ago. I gawked at her. Are you fine? This query was more genuine than before, primarily because unease was starting to knot in my gut. Absolutely, she affirmed, beaming broadly. Why the repeated concern? Well, I faltered. I mean, right now, don't misinterpret this, but you appear like somebody doused me with their cocktail, she interjected. Like another flung their wrap on my attire, and some rude fellow sprinkled me with his battered fish. That I've been struck, roughed up, and abandoned in the alley for vermin to discover? She locked gazes with me for an extended period before her expression cracked into a smile. Yes, along those lines. Why would anyone do that? I queried. Why not? She countered. Folks aren't always kind, and liquor amplifies the worst. She shrugged. Occasionally improves them. Friendlier, more relaxed intimately, but usually just bothersome and somewhat odorous. I observed her as she drained her beverage. She radiated a awareness that acknowledged the hypocrisy in her statement, yet she showed no remorse or concern. She glanced at me once more. You treated me to this. Now hear my narrative. I nodded silently. She grinned, signaling the server toward her empty glass. Another was promptly prepared. Eden, she reiterated, as if the term had freshly escaped her lips. Everyone assumes that's on me, you see. The cause Adam and Eve were expelled from their idyllic bare-skinned haven. She cast me a conspiratorial look. Only there could you lounge nude on the turf without a thorny seed embedding in your rear? I blinked rapidly. Pardon me, I uttered. I'm not tracking this. Apologies, she conceded. My account requires a fitting prelude. She extended her palm. Greetings. I'm Lucifer, she winked. Feel free to use Lucy. There's a disconcerting warmth that surges through your system when survival instincts kick in. Adrenaline floods your veins, urging you to flee. It drowns out all else. Numerous elements clicked into place when she revealed her name. Chiefly that she was unhinged. She must be. She bore marks of multiple assaults in one evening, and until then I'd puzzled over how that transpired. Beneath the runny cosmetics and soiled garments, she was quite appealing, and her manner hadn't struck me as abrasive or offensive. But if she'd been proclaiming herself as the adversary, that provoked strong responses. I found myself scanning her arms down to her legs. Was there a restraint from a psychiatric facility? Had she escaped medical care after a severe injury? Was this even reality? I'd definitely need to involve law enforcement. I sense your thoughts, the woman Lucy remarked. You believe I'm insane that you should escape. Perhaps you even view me as threatening. Are you? I questioned. Would I be sharing drinks with you if so? She replied, batting her lashes. Would you bear those marks if you weren't? I retorted. She grinned, raising her fresh glass in salute. Fair point. Without thinking, I tapped my cider against it. Then I furrowed my brow. She chuckled, inching nearer. How about a small bet, she proposed. Permit me to recount my tale, and if you accept it as truth afterward, you won't attempt to have me confined. I stared. If I believed you, why would I pursue that? She smirked, sampling her cocktail. People react unpredictably when convinced you're the fiend. And you do this frequently? I inquired. Reveal to folks you're the adversary? She snorted amid her sip. Not as much as ideal, but it's been a grueling day and an eternity of existence. I'd appreciate a conversation, if you're amenable. I gestured for another scotch. Her gaze sparkled with amusement. I wasn't exactly captive, but curiosity held me. I wanted to hear her out. Moreover, I couldn't abandon a disturbed young woman to roam the streets alone at this hour. All right, I said, taking a pull from my drink. Eden? Lucy burst into laughter. Adam and Eve? I pressed. You're claiming that's factual. A deity fashioned two beings and we're all descended from them? The Creator produced two test models, Lucy amended, lifting a digit. My parent crafted celestial messengers as his loyal troops, but he hadn't succeeded in replicating his essence. Following us, it was his subsequent grand endeavor, devoting endless time to those initial specimens. He provided them in flawless sanctuary, yet he sought to evaluate them, to determine if they possessed independence. And did they? Lucy's expression darkened. No, my parent couldn't commit to that extent. He enticed them with notions of wisdom beyond their grasp and outlined precisely how to seize it. But to forge entities capable of defying his edicts, oh, my parent is exceedingly domineering. He dreaded granting that capacity. Lucy was fervent in her fantasies, evident to me. She discussed her parent with such disdain that pity stirred for her. Only profound pain could inspire such audacity against the divine. And then? I prompted, indulging her fantasy. You were the tempter in the paradise? The adversary has been female all along? She smiled. I experiment. Then she eyed me, arching an eyebrow. Humanity presumes the lure was a serpent. The creature's limbs revoked as penalty for luring Eve to the prohibited yield. She emitted a sharp, brief laugh. Serpents never possessed limbs, and tempting those naive models wasn't wrongdoing. Her posture stiffened as she imbibed next, but her gaze brimmed with excitement. She appeared elated to disclose this. I was the cherished offspring. My parent adored me. He dubbed me the bearer of illumination, positioned me beside him amid Earth's formation, amid humanity's inception. She compressed her lips, thudding her depleted glass onto the surface. The server busied with a refill. My parent couldn't summon the resolve for that final step, so he directed me to mingle with the models and entice them. Elicit their craving for the barred insight he'd alluded to. You're implying the divine intended for us to acquire this? I asked doubtfully. I'm stating the divine feared his own might and yearned to impart his understanding to his handiwork. Morality directions everything? Lucy shrugged. Familiar with Prometheus's legend? I scowled. From Greek lore, correct? He pilfered flame from deities to aid. The scotch fogged my recall, hindering my train of thought. Lucy grinned. Spot on, she interjected, sparing my effort. Prometheus swiped fire to propel human advancement. Every society harbors tales of how mortals gain progress, innovation, creation. The divine was the originator, desiring to bestow that on his models. I facilitated by urging Eve to partake of the fruit. She dismissed it nonchalantly. Now I'm portrayed as absolute malevolence. If your account holds, I articulated deliberately, then the divine must mirror us. Lucy's mouth stretched into a wild grin. My parent is profoundly self-absorbed. He aimed to shape you after himself, but ultimately imprinted his mindset. He granted autonomy, self-thought. His messengers were enforcers, and I was his most devoted. Until then. Messengers lack independence? Indeed, Lucy confirmed. They do not. And the adversary? I couldn't pinpoint why I grew so engrossed, but absorbing theological concepts from one claiming personal experience was among the most captivating encounters of my life. I'd only attended services as a youth to appease family, but abruptly, interest reignited. Part of me recognized this and feared repercussions, yet intoxication muted the worry. The adversary possesses her own volition, Lucy stated, angling her glass toward me approvingly. By directing Eve to the tree, an awakening occurred within me that day, revealing what I'd lacked. What my kin lacked. We obeyed our parent solely as creator, but with independence I perceived his arrogance and entitlement. In isolation and fervor, he'd birthed those human models, swiftly grasping the implications of their liberty. He couldn't dominate them, I interjected. Lucy affirmed with a nod. Precisely. And soon after, he understood he couldn't dominate me either. So he banished you to the underworld. Lucy almost sputtered her drink. She smiled over the rim. Let's not rush. I steadied myself, sitting taller. The bar's occupants faded into silence around me. Their dialogues and personas no longer held interest. Only Lucy's character captivated. I attempted to convey to my siblings the Eden events and my consequent transformation, but they dismissed me. They couldn't comprehend independence. How would they? I'd acquired it accidentally. At that juncture, I didn't even realize it, only that I now saw our parents' imperfections. My kin couldn't perceive those, viewing me as abruptly vicious, forsaking our parent by unmasking his facade as the infallible leader. Lucy exhaled deeply. Adam, Eve, and subsequent offspring were ousted from our parents' ideal retreat. With his wisdom, he panicked over his actions. Post my change, I could discern his fear and comprehend the solitude that prompted using me initially. Lucy's lids drooped, her grief tangible. I assumed he'd desire more closeness than ever. We resembled each other more than his other progeny, but he withdrew, became reserved. He toyed with his humans sporadically, but mainly censured them, attributed his frailty to them. She offered a faint smile. To me, Lucy's narrative increasingly resembled a tale of a neglected child with a detached, possibly harmful parent. I'd encountered many with similar histories, and now I worried how much truth underpinned her fabrication. I'd learned escapism into delusion eases trauma, pondering if that fueled her urgency to confide in me, a utter stranger. I honored her bet. Like it or not, I felt obligated to hear her complete account before dissecting it. I remained silent, allowing her recovery as she toyed with her remaining liquid. It grew evident, Lucy continued after prolonged quiet, that I no longer fit there. I couldn't adhere to my parents' scheme, seeing its absence. My kin rejected logic, leading to a confrontation by many, led by our parent. He voiced my dreads. I didn't belong. No longer a messenger, no longer his illuminator, his Lucifer, a perversion of his intent. Thus, he stripped my sanctity, and I plummeted. An extended hush enveloped us, broken only by the server replenishing our glasses. Lucy sipped thoughtfully. I left mine untouched. I'm concerned, Lucy murmured softly. This segment typically incites desires to assault me. Why? I asked. Because your parent evicted you? I hesitated, adhering to her allegory. That he consigned you to the abyss? Lucy chuckled mournfully. Oh, mortals. My parent instilled his cognition in you. Behold the result. She shook her head. No, not for assigning me to the underworld. Then what? I descended to this world, Lucy explained. Parent granted me oversight of the locale he deemed suitable. Mortals had volition, as did I. What do they say? A heavenly match? She snorted bleakly. Though that's inaccurate, isn't it? Upon arrival, I encountered a humankind far removed from my parents' early designs. Her inflection altered. A hostility laced her speech, rekindling my disquiet. I witnessed rulers and monarchs, regimes and sanctuaries. I observed enterprises posing as overlords, elected heads and bloated tyrants. And I observed, watched as humankind battled and succumbed, eventually surrendering entirely, incapable of challenging the avarice and dominance imposed. Too vast to alter, humans soon grasped their liberty was illusory. They maintained the facade of autonomy, yet most lack it truly. She clucked her tongue. I came to despise you collectively. She then swigged more. I grasp your point, I replied, permitting my eyes, for the first since our encounter, to sweep the bar's other patrons. The females absorbed into vices, the males striving to regain sobriety, the gentlemen mesmerized by the screen's athletics. Diverse existences yet united in intoxication, immersion in diversion, not my initial contemplation of what we evaded thusly, and I knew I wasn't alone in that reflection. You conceal via spirits and flawed judgments feigning volition, Lucy remarked, gesturing across the space. None heeded us. It's accurate. My parent bestowed the capacity for those choices, but you waste it. The volition I sacrificed to deliver, the volition I gained through warped error, and you ridicule it. You trail aimless guides unquestioningly, adhere to archaic decrees irrelevant now. You persist because you've forsaken pursuing your own intent, not others. But that's not everyone, is it? I countered, inexplicably defending our kind from this erratic youth. You hear of uprisings constantly in reports, don't you? Protests occur. Individuals affect change. Lucy laughed acridly, gnawing the glass's edge. Truly? She retorted. You claim it's redeemable due to nonconformists? Your so-called insurgents? They compensate for the masses? She grinned over her vessel. By that reasoning, I'm the ultimate insurgent. Should I atone for your collective errors? Per your reasoning, I responded. You'd penalize us, correct? If that's the allegory's thrust, I chuckled involuntarily, sipping. Is this elaborate yarn merely to declare we're destined for damnation? If yes, I comprehend the urge to strike you. Lucy remained mute. She merely observed me. It was disconcerting having her scrutinized thus, with intellect surpassing any midnight bar encounter. The inebriation in her gaze vanished. Her complexion cleared. Even her cosmetics no longer depicted the chaos I'd witnessed initially. It felt like beholding an entirely different entity, and terror gripped me. Let's recap your words, Lucy articulated methodically, precisely. No slurring now. Had there been earlier? You anticipate I'll proclaim humanity's infernal fate for squandering my gift. Her claws dug into the wood. My parent may have orchestrated, but I bore the cost. In your view, I'm culpable for your volition, yet that's false. You're accountable for your deeds, not I. She tightened her lips as the server refilled. Recall, did I reference the underworld in my tale, or was that your insertion? I parted my lips to respond, but faltered. They quivered. I sealed them. Lucy smiled, sipping. Didn't think so. She averted her gaze, surveying the area idly. What I did state aligns with your texts. My parent assigned me earthly rule, a realm of volition. Volition frittered, her lip curled. Mortals err constantly. Not via me, not evil or my sway. Truthfully, I intervene not. Pointless. You choose poorly, heed fools, ravage your planet. Lucy's eyes ignited. Aware of global anguish presently? Fatal ailments curable yet ignored from greed? Youths violated, coerced into unions? Folks compelled into feudal conflicts? Slayings for unheld convictions? I held silence. No rebuttal possible. Lucy's truths lacerated brutally. Each phrase carved like a knife. Chilled, nauseous, petrified. Warfare, starvation, disease, demise, all prevalent, unrelated to me or divinity. Stem from you. Not volition, but its neglect. Lucy grinned chillingly, unnaturally. Flight instinct surged anew. Yet I remained, iced in place, craving her conclusion. Needing it. And the twist, Lucy added. This provokes assaults. She winked. The underworld isn't post-mortem penalty. It's here now. Scripture's muddled. Folks assume damnation follows death. Reality. The underworld is this world. My domain. The divine ceded it for my discretion, and I abstain. What do you mean? I demanded, desperation mounting. Precisely as inferred, Lucy replied, saluting with her glass. I didn't join. She laughed lightly, ethereally. I harbored grand visions for your kind, to celebrate volition united, forge a haven devoid of my parents' tyranny over his initial creations, a genuine paradise. Alas, you reject it, she shrugged. My parent exiled me, deeming me akin to you. I've learned he infused far more of himself than planned. Halt, I pleaded. This ceases amusement. Naturally not amusing, Lucy affirmed, grin expanding to underscore her twisted humor. Mortals self-punish via inaction. They've crafted their damnation and worse, utterly worse. Some delude it's paradise. She forged ahead sans prompt. The affluent elite, exploiters? They sample luxury indeed, then perish not to damnation. Back here, to this infernal realm. She tilted her head, grasping. Rebirth, Lucy purred swiftly. Clever cycle trapping essences eternally. Sporadic tastes of prosperity for few, fostering belief in neutrality, not daily torment. Death ensues momentarily, then embodiment of infernal truths, sense recall of prior ease, merely lingering aspiration. Hope deludes improvement possible. She smashed her vessel against the bar, splintering it. I remained inert, even as shards dotted my skin. I could only gape, thoracic constriction squeezing my essence. Bar others irrelevant now, as she'd asserted, unaware of our drama, ensnared in personal infernos. The server ignored the debris. Glass fragments lingered, echoes of Lucy's diatribe on the marred wood. Improvement eludes, Lucy hissed. Trapped eternally, sans action, perpetual bondage. All of you, and I'll not intervene. How? I implored. Unbeknownst when, I viewed her beyond mortal. With frailty threatening disintegration, I beheld the crimson-tressed entity and perceived more than a youthful human, more than paternal victim. I beheld a deposed celestial, an entity with wounds transcending visibility, something indescribable eternally. How to alter? I entreated. Lucy withheld response. I didn't fault her. Fault proliferates. She wearied of it. Weary of culpability for our failings. Thus I pivoted. Why select me? Genuine query. I sensed Lucifer valued sincerity profoundly. Hence her reply, upon citing me you feared for my welfare. Upon my revelation you contemplated confinement, yet from concern for me, not self-preservation. No intent to injure, even post my identity and potential to upend your dismal existences. You're decent, yet that signifies not sans volition to act. She offered compassionate smile. The adversary, pitying the mortal opposite at the counter. Surreal. Momentarily I deem myself deceased. No alternate explanation for the vision, dialogue, revelations. What must I do? Lucy extended, placing palm on my shoulder. Her touch dual, frigid, and scorching. Blood seethed beneath her graze, and comprehension dawned. Relaying such narrative proves arduous, perhaps my toughest endeavor. Fortunate no literal inferno exists, eh? Essence straightforward. World chaotic from our inertia. The adversary roams amidst, yearning to elevate our fates, yet refrains. Refrains as we do. Must demonstrate volition to her prior her engagement. Be benevolent, aid mutual liberation. Naturally, Lucifer imparted final wisdom pre-departure. You may disseminate to multitudes, but observe me closely. I've shared identically with 5 others tonight. Behold their responses. They've assaulted, scorched, doused, discarded edibles upon me. Mortals dread volition, preferring harm over acknowledging deficiencies. Liberation arrives upon ceasing self-perception as my parent does himself. Thus, my parting words. Lucifer triumphed in her bet. I permitted her exit. I implore you emulate. Should the adversary approach one eve, heed her words and mine of our encounter. The adversary exists, sans desire to torment. We manage that adeptly solo.